Hello and welcome back to Nolan Financial Radio. My name is Chris McKinney from Nolan Financial Partners. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 719-210-4242 or visit us online at nolanfinancialpartners.com. And while at our website, click on the radio page, check out our past shows, and you can subscribe to our program on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions or set up a face-to-face or virtual meeting. So if you've gone through the unfortunate process of a beloved parent dying without a will or any clear instructions about how they wanted their assets divided, you probably already know what a difficult and potentially treacherous situation this is. Make no mistake, things like wills and trusts aren't the exclusive territory of the rich and famous. In my experience, everyone, no matter the size of their assets, should leave behind clear wishes and instructions for those assets. Everybody should do it. The easiest way to do so is through an enhanced planning process. But before we start discussing the importance of enhanced planning, let me introduce you to my co-host, Tony Shore, who I'm sure has Mickey Mantle rookie cards sitting around the house that he has a big plan for.
You know what? I don't actually on that one,
Oh.
Chris. I wish. Oh, I wish I had a Mickey Mantle rookie card. But, I love working on this show with you. But truth be told, I mean, if I think a Mickey Mantle rookie card brought $12.6 million at an auction last summer. So I could use that kind of money. If I owned a couple, would I still be here recording with you? You know what the answer to that is? Yes, I actually would. Yes, because that's the kind of love I have for you, Chris. You know that.
That's right.
You know that.
Everybody wants a piece of the radio show. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Mickey Mantle. I remember watching him play. He was awesome.
Oh, well, how old are you?
Oh no, I didn't watch him play.
20s?
I watched clips of him playing.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he's shown a lot, and
I don't know when Mickey Mantle was. I mean, we could, you and I possibly. I don't know when he was a player. What years actually?
It was the 50s.
Yeah, so we're too young. But yeah, I mean, I've seen those clips too. Amazing, aren't they? I mean, he was something else. But hey, we're talking about enhanced planning today, Chris, and I like that because a lot of people might think, what does that mean, enhanced planning? We talk a lot about financial planning. We talk a lot about retirement planning. But this is a good topic. So explain this to us.
So down to its essence, enhanced planning is simply a way that you can seek to maintain the family harmony that you currently have while you're alive, so that it will last after you're gone. Okay. Maybe you don't have family harmony. You're probably not going to change that. But if you have it now, build on that and make sure you encourage that through your life. You don't have to have 20 million in cash sitting around to make enhanced planning a smart move. It doesn't matter what you have. There can be contention about how those things get divided. And so enhanced planning may prove very valuable for to have your will done and to take care of any disputes your heirs may have. So let's say you began collecting comic books when you were a kid back in the 50s and 60s, and you got thousands of comic books. They're worth like $20,000. While it's not life-changing money, maybe you want those to go to a specific grandkid that really enjoyed you reading those comic books to them. And so you want those to go to that grandchild, or at least maybe those specific comics.
Sure.
And so you can do that through an enhanced planning process, and make sure that they get there. Most families get along, and if they all just write it in the will, it'll happen. But sometimes you need a little bit more than that. You're muted, Tony.
Oh, sorry. I was agreeing with you. Yeah, there is more to it. And so, I think that if you don't have a plan that clearly spells out what needs to be done and what you want done with those comic books, after you pass away, or if something should happen to you, you could be rolling the dice and causing conflict for your family, and you don't want to leave your loved ones in a bad situation, right?
Yeah, that's right, and you don't wanna set them up, to have conflict after you're gone, Tony. So, a large comic book collection, an example that I personally know of is there were 6 children, and, the patriarch and the matriarch both died in the same year, and so the war started over the family farm. And so there were about 640 acres. And so at $2,000 an acre, we're talking some serious money, $1.2 million. And so the ones that felt like they worked more on the farm and took care of the parents more felt like one of the kids deserved more than everybody else. And then the other half think it should just be divided evenly. They broke into 3 camps, hired lawyers, and went to war.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, that's not good. So
No.
we need to make sure that we do have a plan in place. And a lot of people think, well, I'm only 45. I don't need a plan, but you really do. Don't, especially if you're married and have a family.
You really do. This goes way beyond the typical wealth management. You need to have that enhanced planning so that uh, you have all the ownership considerations taken care of. There's 3 main elements to this. There's probate, which is just the courts. There's contract, which is written and get lawyers involved, and joint ownership with rights of survivorship. And that's usually just rules of the state that you're in. So probate is property from is somebody's name or personal property, tenants in common kind of thing. Ultimately, the probate process establishes the validity of a will. It means a court will decide what the intentions of your will were. So when it comes to property, one person's name, think automobiles, investment accounts, cabins, and businesses. Personal property is cash and gold. So then there's the last thing, tenants in common, is any property that's not jointly owned but doesn't have rights of survivorship. So contract ownership is also something that's important. It usually has built-in beneficiary arrangement, and examples include life insurance, annuities, IRAs, stocks, and trust. So those are things that your financial planner will help you with and make sure that they're going to the right person. Lastly, there's the joint ownership with rights of survivorship. That is in effect here in the state of Colorado. A deceased person's share goes directly to the surviving owner. This includes houses, investment accounts, bank accounts, things like that.
Wow. Okay. So if you don't have a plan that clearly spells out what you want done, you're going to need one and work with somebody like yourself. And I just want to reiterate that to our listeners. But in terms of enhanced planning's nuts and bolts, what are some things you think people need to be aware of out there?
So, well, they need to be aware of who their trusted agent's going to be. You know, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an estate attorney, I'm not a tax attorney, but you need to be able to talk with those people and figure out how all the things go through. So you've got to get your financial toolbox put together with professionals, and then they're going to help you figure out who the 3 parties to trust are when you're creating something like a trust.
Right.
So that's the grantor of trust, trustees, successor, and beneficiary. Um, so once the trust is in place, the trust survives you. So and that's the great thing is whatever you put in that trust, that trust is going to say who owns it after you're gone.
Right. Yeah, and that's what you want. Yeah, and I've been going through this, as I told you before the show, with my parents.
Yeah.
They set up a trust. If something happens to my dad, money goes into the trust to so my mom has money to live on or help her out. She's in
Right.
long-term care, and then I'm the executor of that trust. They
Nice.
there's a million ways these things can be set up, but we worked with both. You've got to work with both the financial advisor yourself,
Right.
alongside those estate planning attorneys to make sure that somebody's looking at the big picture, right?
Right.
And I think that's the best way to go about it. You and Tara have estate planning attorneys, or an attorney that you recommend and work with a number of your clients, correct?
Yes, of course. Yeah, because we think it's important that you have somebody that we've talked to so that we know that they'll take care of you.
Sure. So we're talking about trusts. Do you have any more info on that topic for us? That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there are two major types of trust, and so it's important to know that there are these two main types that most people use.
Okay.
There's a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. And unlike flammable and inflammable, they do not mean the same thing. Okay.
Okay.
A revocable trust is run by the person who established it, and the assets within the trust can be taken out. So if you put something in a revocable trust and then you don't want it to be in that revocable trust, you can pull it out. If an irrevocable trust is run by a person or entity other than the person who established the trust, once assets are gifted into that irrevocable trust, it's in there. It's established. It's done. So now here's the key thing about a revocable trust. Whoever established that revocable trust, once they pass, once they die, that trust becomes irrevocable. You can't move things in and out of it. It's set at that point.
Hmm. Interesting. So, where do taxes fit into enhanced planning? I mean, obviously, they're going to play a part here.
Yeah, that's where your financial services professional and your tax professional can really help you create a strategy to limit your tax burden. We do a lot of things with endowment contracts that can help you and various things. There's the gift tax exclusion, and I'm going to go over that real quickly. Here's some numbers for you. So you can currently gift 17,000. And then those filing jointly can give 34,000. So if it's a couple, they can do 34,000 per year to an heir. And what this does is uh, there's no taxable event if you stay under that 34,000. And so you can give that to an heir, and that way you can start to pull down your assets to stay under any estate taxes that may be coming, or to help your heirs manage that tax burden for when you pass. So now there's a lifetime limit on that, and that lifetime cap for an individual is a little over 12,000.
Hmm.
For a joint filer, it's a little over 25,000. So if you're, I'm sorry, 25 million, 12 million and 25 million. Okay. The lifetime and estate and gift tax exemption are the total amounts of gifts a person can make during their entire lifetime. So every time you give that 17,000, that goes against that lifetime cap. And then the estate gets added into that cap when you pass. So whatever the state is, then that gift, whatever those gifts were, get added back into your estate, basically.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. That's big. And I'm guessing a lot of people who are listening out there right now are probably curious about where capital gains fit into all of this and are enhanced and in estate planning.
Yeah, so capital gains are usually occur when somebody uh, has something that's property that that was of lower value, and now it's at higher value, so that the cost basis is less than the current value. So what the current law is that there's a thing called step up basis.
Hmm.
So if you have inherited property or inherited investment, you the cost basis becomes whatever the value is when you inherited. That way, you don't get charge capital gains on that property. Well, say it's a house and they bought it back in the 70s for $20,000. Well, now it's in the middle of a big town and it's worth $2 million. And it was a nice house back then. It's still a nice house because they've kept it up. But now you've inherited it. And instead of having to pay taxes on from 20,000 to 2 million, you don't have to do that. They give you a step up to whatever the current value is. And then when you say you sell it in 5 years for 2.5 million, you'd only pay capital gains on the step up, which is that $500,000. Is that clear?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I think that obviously we can get deep in the weeds with this. But that's, once again, this just illustrates why you need to work with an independent financial advisor, somebody who's you can trust, who's a fiduciary looking out for your best interests. And I know this is something you and Tara help people with. And I know when it comes to meeting with clients, this is something you can go over. In fact, speaking of that, when a new client comes to meet you or a listener calls up and said, hey, I want to take advantage of that complimentary consultation you're offering, what documents should they bring with them if they want to discuss enhanced planning?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tony. So to begin the enhanced planning process, you'll need your current retirement income and financial statements. You'll also need copies of current wills, trusts, powers of attorneys you may have, as well as probably a recent tax return would be quite helpful. And so we can help you get the ball rolling on a lot of critical financial matters. We can review all your documents to make sure that if it's a contract beneficiary, we'll make sure that those are all correct. And then we'll look at your will and make sure that you've got that favorite thing that those comic books that you wanted to have go to that specific grandchild, to have those in there. And so what we want to make sure is that all your finances and all your determinations happen. So that's investment statements, insurance policies, tax documents, wills and trust, any medical information and directives. So if you have a living will, those kind of things, any powers of attorney you may have. So my parents both have powers of attorney to my sister. She lives closest. And so she's going to be making decisions for them if they can't make decisions. Those are things that as we grow older, we really need to have power of attorney, somebody that can make decisions for you when you can't. Those trusts can help with those things. Somebody that has that power of attorney in our later years can really help out. I know that you were dealing with that with your grandmother as well. So,
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, this isn't something people like to think about. People put off, estate planning, legacy planning, and this overall enhanced planning. I'm glad you went over what people need, those investment statements, insurance policies, tax documents, wills and trusts. And if they meet with you, that's what they should be bringing. And, we've talked a lot about enhanced planning today in terms of some cold, hard numbers. You've given us a lot of facts, and that's important. But there's an emotional component to all this, obviously, right?
Yeah, there's a huge emotional component to this, especially when somebody passes. I felt a number of clients, it's always the guy that's the first one to go. So it's usually ladies. And so, but recently I had a man, he lost his wife early. She was only in her 60s. And so he's been dealing with this. And then he's also retiring. So he's dealing with a lot of changes. So I keep in touch with him and make sure that the money he's receiving is taking care of him, that if we need to make changes to how things go, he's got those things in place. I worked with them to make sure that they had both their names on all the correct documents. So things would pass seamlessly to him and he wouldn't have to run around to all these places with a death certificate and say, can I get access to this bank account? Right?
Yeah.
Can I have access to this? Oh, he had these investment accounts. I'm the beneficiary. Um, I need to control it, and trying to get all those things. We did those ahead of time so that there was no question. It was easy. He knew where all the money was. There was no question where his money was, how to get to it. And so it's been, I don't want to say seamless, but it's never seamless when you lose a loved ones. Um, you just, it's nice to know that you have things in place so that the kids, the grandkids, everybody knows what's going to happen when something bad happens.
Yeah.
And so that there's harmony, right? We're seeking harmony in life. We want happiness in life. And so having that enhanced planning process can really help a family, the whole family.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
Obviously. And we're talking about how important of a role enhanced planning plays. How can our listeners get a hold of you to set up that complimentary consultation to discuss this? Get a plan in place.
Right, Tony. So our listeners can reach me at 719-210-4242. My name is Chris. I'm with Nolan Financial Partners. You can find our website at nolanfinancialpartners.com. Um, Go out there, check out the website, click on the radio page. You can listen to our previous shows. Um, but you want to set up that complimentary consultation, call us at 719-210-4242.
That's great. And, obviously, this is something that needs to be done ahead of time. I mean, you got to start thinking about it as soon as you have a family. And even if you don't, once you reach a certain age, if you're 50 and you don't have enhanced planning and an estate plan in place, boy, you need to, it's like the tree. When's the best time to plant it? 20 years ago. When's the second best time to start enhanced planning? Today, right?
That's right.
So
That's
you
right.
got to do it today. What else? What do you have for us next? Where do you want to go with this next?
Well, some other points I want to make. Um, you know, enhanced planning is basically largely geared toward protecting beneficiaries. So we've kind of gone through that. Um, whether you're wealthy or in the middle class, enhanced planning is a tool that to clearly state how you want your assets onto their heirs. So that's where you use that will, you use that trust, you set up that executor so somebody has that. Um, so everybody should have a will. I don't care if you're married, if you have kids, then you need to have a will. If you're single and you don't care what happens to your stuff, don't get a will. But it'll just go to the state, or the state will decide.
Right.
So have that will. You don't want the state deciding where things happen. So to me, an enhanced planning process often comes down to simple, straightforward questions. Do you want to decide what happens to your assets, or do you want the court system to make those decisions? So I think the question always gets the same answer in my office. Everybody wants to have control of where their funds, where their money goes, where their stuff goes. So the
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to talk about was heirlooms. So um, there's can be a lot of fight over heirlooms. Now most families have their druthers are in there, and people know, and people don't fight about it, but sometimes they do. So my grandmother had this large bureau. Um, it was made of hardwood. It was an antique in the 50s. Okay. It folds down into a desk. It's a very nice dish bureau, but it also has nice drawers for holding documents and doing things. She used it for everything. It was great. Went to my cousin Lisa. Hey, you know what? Power to them. I would have liked to have had it too, but I'm not going to argue with that. But some people will. So you just want to make sure that that's there.
Yeah.
With family photos, you can set up you can digitize everything, right? So you're
Right.
not fighting over those books.
True.
So there's things that you can do to mitigate that.
Yeah.
Another thing that you really need to do is look at your tax strategy, meet with your financial services professional and your tax professional, build an efficient strategy that takes advantage of the rules. Here in the state of Colorado, we do not have estate tax. There's still federal estate tax that may affect some people, but there's no estate tax here. We have clients in other states where there is actually a state tax on funds over a million. Anything over $1 million is taxable. So that's something to be taken into effect. Almost everybody that's had a successful work life and successful life has almost $1 million now because property values are so high. So they're going to be paying some estate tax.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, and all this stuff plays a part. I mean, taxes especially come into enhanced planning, and I just think it's it's interesting. So
Yeah.
enhanced planning doesn't just address though cash and property. It can address these things that have more sentimental value, and I'm glad we're talking about that as well, right?
Right. And you don't want to set up strife with the family when you're gone. You don't want to set up bad tax situations
Yeah.
for growing families. They're still, maybe your kids are still trying to get their kids through high school and college. That money that they receive from you is going to help. But if you've bumped them up into the highest tax bracket in that year, they lose so much of those funds, the taxes between the state and the
Yeah.
federal. It can be as almost half.
Yeah,
Uh,
taxes are tough.
so you want to have that tax planning so half the money you're trying to give your heirs doesn't get sucked up into taxes.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, we've covered a lot, and there's so much more when it comes to enhanced planning. But Chris, I know that you and Tara would love to hear any questions our listeners might have. Before we go, how can they get a hold of you?
So if you'd like to talk about anything we discussed on today's show, about your retirement goals and what you want to have done, go out to our website, nolanfinancialpartners.com. Call us at our office, 719-210-4242. We'll discuss with you how we might be able to help you address your questions, your concerns, so that you can get things done the way you want them done. That number is 719-210-4242.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Nolan Financial Radio.
Join us again soon for another episode of Nolan Financial Radio. Take care, and we'll talk to you again.